Deputy Smith.
Minister, I bring this topical issue to the House because I think it's a good news story, but I also see it as a series of events in which we witnessed quite foul attacks on Pride in the last couple of weeks, from the burning of flags in Waterford to the painting of vile homophobic graffiti in the city centre opposite a gay bar. And I want to preface what I'm going to say by stating categorically I'm not a Catholic, I'm an atheist, but I give credit where credit is due. And in the parish of the Assumption in Ballyfermot last week, the parish council and the parish priest, Father Éireann, took a decision to fly the Pride flag, along with the tricolour, outside the church, as a gesture of inclusivity for our LGBTQ+ community in the area, and for young people in the parish in particular. Following complaints to the Archdiocese and a social media campaign that in many ways was quite foul, the criticisms of the parish priest were too much even for me to bear. And as I say, I give credit to the man and to the parish council where they deserved it. I recognise that everyone should be free to express their religion. I defend everybody's right to express their religion, but I also defend their rights to express within that religion their sexual and personal identity. For some people, however, that was not enough, and there was a protest, a rosary-style protest staged last Saturday. Many of us were in an anti-racist event in town and weren't aware of it. And so when I spoke to Father Éireann, the parish priest, about this, he was quite upset about the amount of pile-on he was getting on social media in response to this. Some of it I read and was quite shocking. And it was quite shocking to the majority in our community. And therefore, we got together under the Ballyfermot Anti-Racist Network, along with many of the youth services, the network of LGBTQ+ community in the area, and especially with young people, to decide on something very positive, which will happen tomorrow night outside the Assumption Church at the roundabout, where we will join together to celebrate Pride and to send a message that this is a community that celebrates diversity and not division. I think this will be a big event. I think it will be supported by loads of people, even if they can't make it. We want it to be socially distanced and masked up, but we want it to be a celebration, and a celebration that will send a message in particular to our young people that they are included and they are welcome. In this current period in the 21st century, this is hugely important. And I know this morning there was a discussion here on the issue of Viktor Orban and the repression of the LGBT community in Hungary, particularly in light of events around soccer matches. And I think that for us, Hungary has to be the canary in the coal mine for Europe. Not just about marching against gay people, but also the growth of the far right against immigrants and against workers. And it's interesting to note that the cover that's often given, and you know this too well, is that gay people are somehow dangerous to children. And it's also further interesting to note that those who make that foul, despicable claim, first of all, they can't stand over it, but I know they used a noose outside the Dáil in relation to your own bill on children's issues and your appointment. But also, what it does is it says that we want to identify paedophiles with gay people, but at the same time, we were the ones that want to return to the dark days of the control of the Catholic Church, where none of them blew the whistle on the abuse that was happening at an institutional level for decades in this country. So I think this is really something positive to celebrate in Ballyfermot. Pride is happening everywhere on Saturday. We're holding the event tomorrow evening, and we just want to send out a very strong message of solidarity to all LGBTQ+ people, and particularly young people who during COVID and post-COVID are struggling with mental health issues, but also with their identity and where their future lies. And I hope this does send a positive message across the gay community.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Chair, and I want to thank the Deputy for raising this extremely important issue and bringing attention specifically to the incident in which the Pride flag was removed from outside the Our Lady of Assumption Church in Ballyfermot. Maybe if we just step back for a moment and remember what the Pride flag symbolises and why Pride celebrations are so important in terms of promoting the self-affirmation, the dignity, the equality and increased visibility of all members of the LGBTI+ community in Ireland and beyond. And look, it's those themes that the government seeks to implement in terms of our strategies, the National LGBTI+ Inclusion Strategy and the National LGBTI+ Youth Strategy. And the aim of those strategies is to target discrimination, to promote inclusion and improve the quality of life and well-being of LGBTI+ people in Ireland, particularly LGBTI+ young people. And in relation to the specific incident in Ballyfermot, again, and you'd have the best insight on it, but I understand Father Egan decided to fly the Pride flag with a particular, I suppose, recognition that members maybe of his community, his congregation, who are LGBTI+ themselves or who had family members, that they had felt offended, they had felt left out, they had felt excluded by the dogma that comes from the Catholic Church, and he wanted to indicate that they would be welcome in this week of all weeks, and that his church and their community church would be a welcoming place for them. And his motives in doing that were entirely positive, and they're entirely consistent with that idea of full inclusivity and equality for the LGBTI+ community in our country. So look, I'd like to join with you in expressing thanks and support to Father Egan and indeed to the wider community in Ballyfermot, who I know fully support the Pride flag being flown. And like yourself, I say that as an atheist, but I think it's important to recognise where somebody perhaps goes against the grain within their own organisation in such a prominent way. And look, I believe the work of community groups is so important in terms of promoting visibility and making LGBTI+ people feel included and feel valued within their own in their own area, and particularly welcome since the removal of the flag. I want to recognise the work that Ballyfermot Anti-Racism Network and Ballyfermot Youth Services are doing to support Father Egan, but in particular support the wider LGBTI+ community in a situation where that symbol of inclusivity has been taken down in such an important week. And you reflected on those other ugly incidents that's happened in Pride Month. The graffiti outside Panty Bar, the burning of flags and the erection of posters in Waterford. And I had the opportunity to go down to Waterford on Monday, and it was an opportunity in the first place to speak with members of the Pride Committee, and particularly young members of the Pride Committee. Pride of the Déis is only 2 years old. They were just kind of getting into their stride, and I think it was a shock to them to see such a public attack on the community. I also wanted to recognise, I suppose, the mayor and the city and county council, but most importantly the entire city, because if a small minority thought they were, doing some blow against LGBTI+ rights in this country, they got their answer from the city of Waterford, and that was a unanimous and clear answer, because Waterford was bedecked in Pride flags. It was a great honour to be there just to erect 2 more, but Waterford gave its answer to that small bigoted minority.
I think there probably will be members of my community who will be offended by what I'm saying and think that I'm being anti-Catholic and anti-gospel and all that. This is not at all the case, and I am very concerned about young people in our area. And as a member of the Ballyfermot Anti-Racist Network, I had long conversations with Father Adrian Egan, and I really do recommend him for sticking his neck out, so to speak. I know the church have their own debates, and that's their business, and I'm not trying to interfere in those debates. But I do also want to recognise that the Ballyfermot area in 2015 had, on a given night, canvassing the estates, up to 200 people who were joined together, knocking on doors, asking people to think about their children, their grandchildren, their nieces and nephews, and we were pushing at an open door. The results showed it. In one box in Cherry Orchard, there was over 90% of the people voted yes to recognise same-sex marriage. Another box in Ballyfermot Main Street had about 85% of yes votes, and overall, my constituency of Dublin South Central voted by a staggering 72.3% for same-sex marriage. And I say that because it really is a canary in the coal mine when you see people starting to attack gay rights. I mean, Viktor Orban didn't actually start by attacking the gay community. He started with the immigrants. He went on to attack workers by forcing them to work overtime of up to 400 hours a month without involuntary, and having to wait up to 3 years for payment. He wasn't without opposition, just like he's not without opposition now on the question of the laws he's bringing in against gays. But we cannot afford to go down that road in this country. And I suppose one thing always sticks in my mind when I read about these incidents and try to confront the rhetoric of the far right is the poem by another priest, Pastor Niemöller, when he wrote after the war in 1946 as a survivor of the concentration camps. First they came for the socialists and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me and there was nobody left to speak out for me. And I'm not being rhetorical by using those words. I think they're important. I think they should be in all of our hearts, particularly now during Pride Week.
Thanks very much, Deputy. And look, I think it is a really important comparison to make in terms of what's happening in European countries right now. And you've highlighted Hungary. We saw last year and earlier this year similar situations in Poland in terms of these so-called LGBTI plus free zones. I know myself and the government and across the Oireachtas that was condemned. I met with the Polish ambassador earlier this year to convey the government's real concern about what was happening and to speak to her about the approach we've taken in Ireland in seeking to be as inclusive as possible and supporting our LGBTI plus community and particularly young people. And I talked about how difficult it must be to be a young LGBTI plus person in Poland and hear very prominent members of political parties say some of the most awful language in terms of the LGBTI plus community. And similarly in Hungary right now, and I think you made that very correct analogy in terms of that dog whistle that has been used by the far right against members of the LGBTI plus community, linking paedophilia and homosexuality, and to see that actually legislated for now in a European country. Like it must be very scary to be in Hungary right now as an LGBTI plus person, to actually see in your own lifetime your rights being eroded. I'm incredibly lucky to grow up in this country where throughout my life I've seen my rights as a gay man progressed, and so many of the LGBTI plus community have seen that too. Not finished yet, a lot more to do, and a lot more to do in so many other areas of life as well. But generally, I think in all areas, we're generally moving forward in Ireland. So look, the government, and I've been incredibly, I've said these are homophobic laws, I've called them for what they are, and I know Minister Coveney has also spoken out strongly in terms of the European Council, and we'll continue to do so. And thank you for raising this very important issue. And I'd just like to say yourself, your community in Ballyfermot, and everyone in the Oireachtas, happy Pride.
Thank you.